Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of the Articulate Fly, and we're back with another East Tennessee fishing report with Ellis Ward. Ellis, how are you?
I'm doing well, Marv. How are you?
As always, I'm just trying to stay out of trouble and took a peek at your weather, and I would say you've got maybe slightly cool but kind of normal spring weather for East Tennessee, right?
Yeah, we've had some couple warm days, and I don't know. Yes, seasonal is seasonable. It hasn't been warm, it hasn't been cold. It's been both, and we've had a good amount of wind. Um, but highs in the mid to upper 60s. We got some days where that sun kicks through and ends up being closer to 75, and then other days where it stays hidden and we're looking at more like mid 40s. So March.
Yeah, and so, interesting, right? So you've still got this kind of milky greeny tinge on both rivers from the silt from the hurricane. But, the last time we spoke, you were getting excited because you were starting to see bugs.
Yeah. I was getting real fired up, and I'm not going to say it was premature, but I do need to be honest with myself and just recognize that it happens every year right about this time. You just get inconsistent hatches. We're still, I have to say, it's that siltation, just telling the bugs to quiet down. Because in high water releases, as much as you might think that dry fly fishing or bugs hatching would occur in low water, most of the time it's that high water is clear, and it's just like, I'm going to try not to dive down this rabbit hole, but it's just like any other predator prey relationship. When there's more places to hide, in certain places there's clearly some more safety. We can get big hatches coming off with the water, whenever it gets there. And then you kind of see the same when it's falling. You'll see bugs coming off in different places and in different numbers. So that pattern is just, it's still irregular. And, at the same time, I am seeing more and more. So, days getting longer, light penetration continues to increase, siltation drops a little bit. And, the fun part is with the clarity being what it is, it's just something that is, I tried to estimate on a trip this last week, just pointing out in low water how milky green it was, thinking that maybe it's probably under 10% of days that normally that we have this milky green. It lasts for a couple days after rain, after it's chocolate milk, and then it's back to gin clear. So it's certainly not something I complain about. I do miss I think, streamer fishing clients in hours 5, 6, or 7 probably miss the occasional stop for casting to risers, but the risers we have been seeing, just like the streamer eaters that we have been seeing, are up there and eating with commitment. So fishing been pretty good with some hard days, and yeah, at the end of the day, very, very normal March.
Yeah, and interesting too, to kind of give folks an idea. So I was with you, I don't know, gosh, a couple weeks ago, 2, 3 weeks ago. When we talk about the visibility, I mean, you can still, I would say, visibility is what, 3 or 4 feet, and then it kind of starts to get a little bit, you start to lose a fly a little bit, but I mean, it's not like it's, soupy milky, but there's definitely a stain. Would you say that's about right?
Yeah, I would say 3 or 4 feet. And, for anyone who hasn't fished these tailwaters or a tailwater, I remember the gunpowder and savage being pretty similar. like normally in low water, you're counting grains of sand and not pebbles. I mean, you can see sand, and in high water, you're counting pebbles and blades of grass over weed beds. And now in low water, it's you can barely make out what the substrate is on the bottom, and in high water, you can't see boulders. Um, so the visibility is still for any other body of water and any other freestone is still great. I mean, there's really no other way to describe it. It's just super fishy. It looks like a really fishy level of clarity that you would expect from a limestone creek when it's running pretty good.
Yeah, and got a question for you from Andy. He wanted, and he's excited, just like you will be soon, right? He wanted to know, when does mousing start? And, how do you vary your fly design based on the species that you're pursuing with the mouse?
Yeah, I think every October, every Halloween, I'm Happy Gilmore. I'm saying 300 and 200 and something days till mousing season begins. It's really, and I'm going to not dive down this one, but mice are mammals. Uh, if they haven't found a place to stay warm during the winter, the tailwaters don't freeze and have food on their banks. So to the extent you can endure temperatures, um, mousing, top water, whatever you want to call it, is open for business. It's really it really comes down to angler comfort. So I was starting to think about it last week with some of these 75, 80-degree days. That said, nights are still in the upper 30s, so we're probably still a couple weeks out.
Yeah, you don't want to have to put your waders on every time you have to drag the boat, right?
No, but man, sometimes I do just because that water gets cold.
Yeah. And so in terms of, obviously, your main game is, mousing for big trout at night, but if you were going for bass or another species, how would you change your fly design?
Yeah, so I'm just gonna get away from top water and kind of talk about um fly design in general. I think that you get three different types of eats. Rainbow trout, steelhead, whatever you want to call them. They're oftentimes, and this is from watching fish eat flies, and then also looking at where hook points are and which hook points, and with articulated flies, single hook, um, lures with three trebles, and lures with two. Browns eat right in the middle. Whether or not they're trying to nudge a fish to turn it and eat it head first. Someone sent me some video, some slow motion high res video of them doing that with alewives or something, and it's like, all right, well, right, wrong, or indifferent, what is the same thing that is happening every single time from a um, hooking up perspective? And it's that, I mean, gosh, I have this image of fishing a musky fly on a super bitey day in big water with this, nothing crazy. It's a good trout. 20 ended up being over 21, but like it's not crazy big. Blowing through the surface, came all the way out of the water vertically. I had a single hook. It's a musky fly, so we'll dovetail on that a little bit. All the way through the surface, that hook point was in the roof of its mouth. I mean, it was eating that thing squarely in the middle. Um, Fishing the small lures with two trebles on them. I mean, it's just crazy that the speed and the accuracy that they have, especially the smaller fish, you'll see them come in on just that middle treble, and it's it's an inch and a half away from the other one, and they didn't touch it. They hit right in the belly. So from a fly design perspective, boy, Marv, you're going to have to shut this down at some point. Um, I've I'll use game changers as an example of kind of how I fluctuate. Um, and then maybe the swim bug a little bit. But having two hooks in can lead to the dry dropper conundrum of when you get a big eat on a game changer, whether or not the hinges take away, that hook set force, we're gonna leave that alone. Um, if you got that trailer and it gets on the outside of their face, or even on the inside of their mouth, if it's a big fish and it just ends up eating the latter, the back 2/3 of the fly, that that opposing tension is going to pull that that bigger hook out. So you have a smaller, stickier hook, let's say, with not as good of a set, or maybe it's on the outside of their face, pulling on the larger, harder to set hook that's probably on the inside of their mouth, probably on a bonier part of their mouth. And so I started to, after that happened enough, I started to just do one hook point in the middle, and a little of that is taken from Blaine. I fished with Chris Willen a number of years ago, and he showed me this T-bone that Blaine had tied, and I remember him running his hands down to sort of slim it out, and just showing this. It's almost like a catfish hook. This dirty hook, maybe 3/0 or 4/0. Like in the hook point was at like the back 2/3 of the fly, and it's just when you get an eat, you want as much. You always want as much advantage as possible, and so sure, two hook points can be good, but man, if you put that thing 2/3 of the way back, more than halfway back, um, that's for brown trout, for muskie. That's their eat. That hook point is going to find their face, and the only thing, I mean, there's nothing getting in the way outside of you not strip setting. Like when you're strip setting, 100%, you're pointing your rod. You don't have bow in your line. You're not lifting your rod. You're not sweeping your rod to the left or pushing it down. You're just pulling on it. I mean, dude, you can break 30-pound mono. It's kind of hard, but I mean, you can pull really hard on a direct strip set, and all of that force is going to that hook point. Um, so I'm partial to the concept of reducing the number of hook points. Swim bug, for example, I like that big gap in the middle with a shank, and then Gamakatsu B10S6 is just, it's strong enough for most trout. I don't really like it for striper, but a really sticky smaller hook in the back. And that front hook is oftentimes I'm tying that for keel, for momentum, for swimming and casting dynamics, and they end up getting that back hook on the inside of their mouth, and so there's a lot of intentionality that I sort of bypass when talking about that fly and most of my flies. But point being, with trout, with muskie, like if your hook point on the back hook is somewhere within like a third of the body length away from the bend of the front hook, it's too close. That front hook is effectively a bite guard. Um, Now with smallmouth, you look at the same fly and how they would eat it with the swim bug, for example. They're going head first. They eat. They flare their gills. They swim right through it and vacuum it in, and that back hook ends up on the outside of their mouth a lot. And so with smallmouth, you can certainly afford to get away with leaning more towards the front or um just going, one point, just because they're going to eat the thing. And same principle with reducing the number of competing points of force, pulling things out, or just spreading that hook set over two different points. So, uh, yeah, muskie, same principle as brown trout, just everything's a little upsized. But I mean, you don't need to go 6-aught, you don't need to go 7-aught, 2-aughts, 3-aughts, depending on what type of hook they are, as long as they're heavy enough gauge. Um, that can increase your hookup ratio as long as that hook point isn't blocked from something bigger in front of it, and it's in the behind, let's say, the front half of the fly, but really the front 2/3.
Well, there you go. We'll call it there. The drones are almost to you.
Yes, we have to stop somewhere.
So folks, we love questions on the articulate fly. You can email me or DM me on social media, whatever is easiest for you. And if we use your question, I will send you some articulate fly swag, which may include a sticker for the new podcast, The Butcher Shop. We're just saying. And we're going to drawing for some cool stuff from Ellis. And Ellis, before I let you go, I know you've probably been processing bucktail. You got all kinds of stuff going on. You want to let folks know bucktail status, Easter colors, how to get on the boat, all that kind of good stuff?
Yeah, I need to. My pastels need some work. I've been chopping and dyeing and um, have not uploaded. I want to do a big batch release here in the next week or two. I'll make an announcement on Instagram for that. I'm on Instagram at Ellis Ward Guides. Website for trip information and bucktail is elliswardflies.com. And best way to reach me, talk about whatever fishing. I've had a lot of guys reach out just wanting to ask about fly design, or they're coming to fish here with their buddy and they have a boat, and like, I love those conversations. So the best way to do that and to book a trip is my cell phone at 513-543-0019.
Yeah, and you're up for a little mild life coaching as well, right?
Yeah, as long as people are game for mediocre advice.
There you go. Well, folks, as I always say, particularly now that it's pretty much warming up across the country, even up north, they're starting to thaw out. You owe it to yourself to get out there and catch a few. Tight lines, everybody. Tight lines, Ellis.
Appreciate it, Marv.